Chapter 174, EP 33, Reading Again, v. At this time, Baihyung was at the Seoul administrative branch of the bureau. It would soon be time for the Seoul Dome liberation scenario. All dakibis in the dome were busy trying to finish the scenario. Baihyung walked through the halls of the bureau and saw newly hired low-grade dakibis moving along with the instructor. Newly born dakibis. They received basic education at the branch's education center, were assigned their own channels and were reborn as streamers. Don't hesitate to intervene if the interest of the constellations fall. You can't directly intervene in a given main scenario, so use sub-scenarios to aggravate the conflicts between people or create a dangerous situation. Don't create situations where the constellations are annoyed by character conflicts. A good person is a good person, a bad person is a bad person. Make sure the dichotomy is clear. This way, the constellations can easily determine the objects of their anger. Always induce the incarnation to be in the middle of the event. However, keep an eye on the main incarnation and make the event move around the incarnation. It also shouldn't give off an artificial feeling. The instructors spoke these words and the low-grade dakibis were busy taking notes. At one time, Baihyung had been one of them. He learnt how to proceed with the scenario and was taught how to smile and talk. It couldn't be too strange or too cliché. Become a streamer who wasn't disturbed by the scenario progression. Are you remembering the old days? Baihyung turned and saw the advanced dakibi Baram, the chief of the Seoul branch. Baihyung was nervous and his expression changed. Baram stroked his beard and stared at the low-grade dakibis. It is a terrible sight. Every time it sounds refreshing to the constellations, but this is something learnt from the dakibis' formal education. It is somewhat inappropriate for an advanced dakibi to say this. It is you who made the guidelines. Baihyung swallowed down these words. Baram laughed bitterly. It can't be helped. These scenarios sell well. There might be exceptions. There should be. However, that exception is possible because the ordinary scenarios are openly reviled. Some low-grade dakibis were gathered in front of the screens and watching the scenarios going on in Seoul Dome. On the screen, the stories of the incarnations belonging to the biggest channel in Seoul Dome were flowing. Baihyung's face became a bit hot. Then I will be forced to kill you. Yu Junghyuk SSI. No. Yu Junghyuk and Lee Sukyoung were confronting each other on the second floor of Dark Castle. Damn, why isn't it coming out? It will come out. I just don't know when. On the other side, Kim Dokja and Han Sooyoung were discussing an unknown story in the mechanical gateway array method. Baihyung was immersed in his thoughts. I warned him not to say information that would be filtered, damn it. The advanced dakibi Baram opened his mouth. Your channel is popular these days. Talk of your channel is everywhere in the Seoul branch. In particular, that incarnation. I also receive a lot of curses. That's good enough. In any case, it is raising curiosity. Do you know that you are the #1 dakibi respected by the low-grade dakibis these days? I want to know why you called me here. It was language that could seem somewhat rude, but Baihyung had no other way. There would be a difficult situation if he didn't go back to his channel right now. Baram was silent and Baihyung once again spoke. I'm sorry, but it is entering the final phase of the 9th scenario. I have to go back to my channel. That's why I called you. Baihyung saw Baram's serious expression and realized something had gone wrong. There was a loud noise from the screen and the full-fledged battle began. The incarnations with strong sponsors were fighting, raising synchronization in a reckless manner. Signs of a probability storm appeared all over the place. If such strong signs continued, the outer gods would gain the right to intervene. If so, Kim Dokja's safety couldn't be guaranteed. The anxious Baihyung tried to leave this place when Baram spoke in a cold voice. The constellations don't want your intervention. Currently, Bai Hyung's channel was the most influential one in Seoul Dome. The fact that Bai Hyung was clearly being kept in the Seoul branch made something obvious. Since when has the Seoul branch been watching the constellations? I'm always watching. I don't just look at the education of the low-grade dakibis. Isn't this what it looks like on the surface? The main scenario policy. A large number of nebulae have complaints about this scenario. A large number of nebulae. Bai Hyung knew who they were right away. Olympus. Vedas. Papyrus. The nebulae with influence in the star stream were interfering with the progress of this scenario. Why? In fact, Bai Hyung knew why. It is because of that incarnation. Kim Dokja didn't know anything and was still struggling against the mechanical gateway array method with Han Soo-young. At most, he is one incarnation. He can't influence the entire scenario, Bai Hyung refuted. Only one incarnation, do you really think so? No, he isn't an incarnation anymore. Before the 10th scenario arrived, an incarnation with no sponsor became a constellation. This was impossible considering the difficulty of the scenario. He will be a monster. Have you forgotten about the Goryeo first sword incident? It is difficult to see such a non-standard existence again. Goryeo's first sword, Cheok Jungyeong. The strongest on the Korean peninsula and among the historical grade constellations, caused an incident. Bai Hyung also knew about what happened at the time. A person who incited many grudges because his natural talent didn't fit the balance of the scenario. A great deal of probability was consumed to exclude him from the scenario, only for him to return as a constellation. Goryeo's first sword is a special case. Kim Dokja became a constellation faster than him, but Kim Dokja's potential itself isn't high. If it is potential, the incarnation Yoo Jung-hyuk has already reached transcendence. I know. That isn't too serious. In fact, Yoo Jung-hyuk is the one who is similar to Goryeo's first sword. That's why Kim Dokja is more dangerous. The frustrated Bai Hyung shouted, I can understand some of the complaints of the constellations. Kim Dokja didn't enter under them, so they are annoyed. However, isn't this a situation where they have already taken action? Have there ever been any cases where fate is used before the 10th scenario? You are defending the incarnation. It isn't defending. I'm talking about unfair treatment in the scenario. I don't think you are in a position to say that. Bai Hyung was surprised but pretended to be calm. The advanced Dakibi Baram smiled. It's fine. I didn't call you here to catch your transgressions. It sounded like a threat where he intended to catch Bai Hyung's transgressions. Bai Hyung asked, then why? If you're smart then you would know. Haven't you ever thought it was strange? Why are the constellations already using the excessive action that is, fate? In most cases, they can peek at the future through their dealings with prophets who can use future sight, without using fate. If they anticipate how the target will behave, they can change the future with a moderate amount of probability. Yet they didn't do that this time. Why? It was something Bai Hyung had never thought about before. The power to force fate also placed a heavy burden on the nebulae. There were many powerful incarnations apart from Kim Dokja. Why force fate over Kim Dokja? Don't tell me. If the nebulae called for fate, it meant they had no choice but to use fate. In other words, the senior Dakibi Baram nodded. It means that no one in the star stream can see the future of constellation Kim Dokja. How can that be? I don't know either. One thing is for sure, many constellations are afraid that Kim Dokja will reach. It is still being filtered. So, it is all for the end. Baram's gaze was fixed on the screen. You need to do this. Once it is over, I will recommend you to be an advanced Dakibi. It required a screening process to become an advanced Dakibi. Bai Hyung already guessed what Baram would do. Bai-hyung watched the screen and unknowingly hugged the egg. Hey, do a good job. I know. Perhaps it was due to the former Black Flame Dragon incident, but the atmosphere with Han Soo-young had become a bit subtle. Han Soo-young's constant trying to start an argument was probably because she was aware of this awkwardness. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is smiling with satisfaction. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire hates this atmosphere. It took much longer than I thought to digest the power of Cheok Jungyang. 4 hours had already passed. I was sweating just controlling the power of his story. My mother had probably met Yu Junghyuk by now. Han Soo-young was sitting on the floor eating mugwort. Then she said, "By the way, I don't think your mother is a bad person. Did your mind become strange after eating some grass? Well, the two of you seem to have a bad relationship. I don't intend to meddle with someone's family affairs. In any case, she is taking care of her child." How is this taking care? There are many parents in the world who have no interest in their children. Han Soo-young's voice took on a darker tone. I sighed and replied to her, "My mother spoke to me about you. She thought I was dating you." Han Soo-young laughed. Your mother has an eye for females. By the way, she thinks that you Sangha SSI is better than you. So when are you going to kill that auntie? We laughed. Once again, I realized how certain Han Soo-young was. She was more like a character than anybody else these days. Han Soo-young stopped laughing. We sound like characters. It was as if she read my mind. My heart started pounding. Han Soo-young didn't know it, but one day, she would become a character. It was just like Lee Sung-kook and Jung Min-seob. I liked both characters and non-characters, so I didn't know if it was a good or a bad thing. I felt unsure when I thought about that time. Why didn't I want this person to become a character? Something has changed? I looked down at my right hand after hearing Han Soo-young's words. The power of the story borrowed from Cheok Jungyang was finally stabilizing. I nodded. Be prepared. We are escaping. I controlled my strength and pulled out Unbroken Faith. The moment I borrowed Cheok Jungyang's story, the trajectory of his life passed through my head like a panorama. Cutting 1,000 people with one sword. Cutting a great mountain with one sword. Separating the sea with 3 swords. It was Cheok Jungyang's 3-sword style. It was the name given to a person who never swung a sword more than 3 times towards a target. The status you can't afford has fallen onto your right arm. 100 Days seal started to instantly crack. It was the splendor of Cheok Jungyang. The imperfect seal made with just the 8-beaded bell could never restrain Cheok Jungyang's power. A real 100 Days seal would only take effect after gathering all 3 heavenly treasures. The explosive flow of the story has distorted the space of the mechanical gateway array method. The explosive flow of the story has broken the 100 Days seal. I poured the purest sword force into the air. One sword cuts thousands. Like a meteor shower, the sword cut through the air and the space split apart. The mechanical gateway array method and the seal. Everything was pointless before this overwhelming destruction. It was the sword technique of a genius training in the sword for tens of thousands of years. The most ideal cut for destruction. I couldn't see the true power, but I felt a sense of freedom that was just like when I reached 100 strength not long ago. This was the power of the stars. The illusionary space collapsed and reality started emerging. It was a completely crazy sword technique. I felt just as greedy as when I got Kyrios electrification. How good would it be if I could make this mine? Unfortunately, bookmark only applied to characters. Due to your status increase, the bookmark skill will be updated. A new feature has been enabled. Your understanding of the constellation Goryo's first sword has increased by a very slight amount. Chapter 175, EP 33, reading again, 6. What? I was surprised to see the message. So far, my understanding of constellations had never increased. I opened bookmark, but Chiak Jungyang wasn't added to the list of available people. It might be due to the very slight increase. Perhaps it was a 1% increase. Still, I was full of expectations. If my understanding continued to rise, wouldn't it be possible to imitate the skills of the constellations one day? What is this? I turned at Han Suyung's voice. The white sky, the precursor of a storm, looking down at me with a disturbing aura. It was a white night. There were intermittent rumbling sounds and the entire field shook like there was an earthquake. The aftermath of the two warlords colliding scattered all over the plains. However, they didn't kill each other. Everyone, kneel down. A constellation's true voice. I wondered how much probability was consumed to speak these words. Many incarnations who couldn't bear it were struggling in pain. Those who had the protection of their sponsors or those with strong mental powers didn't give in. Han Suyung was one of them. What? What is going on? Han Suyung shouted in a frustrated manner. I watched the field with her. In fact, I thought this might happen but not to this extent. This is an utter mess. Do they intend to all die together? It wasn't just one or two incarnations who raised their synchronization rate to the limit. The probability allowed by Dark Castle was exhausted to the limit. Sparks appeared like firecrackers all over the battlefield. Kim Dokja, listen to me. If you do this, you will die. I heard Bai Hyung's voice coming from someone as I looked at the ruined battlefield. There is only one way to escape from fate. Find the force that will protect you. Otherwise. There was a sound and Bai Hyung's voice was cut off. Someone was blocking Bai Hyung. At the same time, hundreds of eyes focused on me. They were historical grade and some narrative grade constellations who maximized their synchronization with their incarnations. I felt the scorching air and gulped. Then Chiak Jungyang spoke for the first time. You must be scared. Nope. Rather, it is fun. I was serious. Many constellations are looking at you. Some constellations are chanting your name. 2,000 coins have been earned as a bonus. Chiak Jungyang spoke again, the wall of fate is high. It's just a high wall. I will break it if I have to. The person who I loved. Thus, the person who would kill me. I didn't know who they were. Just as I didn't know my own fate, they didn't know me either. Let's go. I ran through the battlefield. This time I didn't hide my power. I will choose the fifth bookmark, Kyrios Rodgrame. The moment that bookmark was activated, I triggered miniaturization and electrification. The technique of a returnee. How interesting. I was able to sweep through the battlefield with the power of Chiak Jungyang. However, I shouldn't overdo it. My right arm had almost turned into a rag after using one sword from the three-sword style. I ran through the battlefield while sprinkling the high-grade physique recovery potion that I had bought from the Dakibi bag. Out of the way. A white trail was left whenever I passed. This was the power of the returnee Kyrios. The power of the being who exceeded level 10 and gained the power of a constellation left white-blue trails as it passed through the battlefield. Aaak. What the? Like a tsunami being split in two, the incarnations fighting each other screamed and scattered. I don't know what you're fighting for, but stop. It was good to raise the ranking to resolve the 9th scenario, but it wasn't good to consume each other in this way. T the ugliest king. I heard he was dead. There were incarnations who remembered me. If you know who I am, do you have a grasp of the situation? Some incarnations put down their weapons while others fell back. There were those looking at me with shining eyes. Many incarnations are paying homage to you. Thank you for the 8th scenario. The rumor about your resurrection was real. There were those who remembered how I sacrificed myself when I was the strongest sacrifice. They lightly nodded and willingly withdrew. Your resurrection story is widespread. A new achievement, mediating Messiah, has been added to your fifth story. I think they were the forces who came from paradise. Yu Jung-hyuk and the party members were probably also included. Then the other side? Ho. We meet again, young man. How did you get out of that array? As expected, they were the Wanderers. I asked Lee Bok-soon, why are you fighting? Why? It is because of you. Lee Bok-soon. She was the grandmother who had Harbin's sniper as a sponsor. You shouldn't go to the next scenario. Is that what my mother said? Lee Bok-soon rushed towards me without answering. The skill-old strength suddenly increased the grandmother's muscle strength, allowing her to push through the surrounding incarnations like a train, arriving by my side in an instant. Under the banner of the constellation Goryeo first sword, all stats will increase by 10 for 30 minutes. All of your stats have temporarily transcended human limits. I couldn't say that I respected the elderly, but some degree of politeness was required. Still, this time was an exception. I'm sorry, but I won't let you go this time, grandmother. The Harbin sniper was a sponsor that only showed a strong response to certain constellations. In other words, the current attack power was based on the power of the stories built up by Lee Bok-soon. If so, I wouldn't be pushed. Once all stats exceeded 100 in the electrification state, an enormous power emerged from my body. Lee Bok-soon was hit by my fist and flew away. Stop, Kim Dokja. The forces of the Wanderers surpassed my expectations. It was unbelievable that they had been defeated by Nirvana's Salvation Church with such a large force. By the way, there were some strange things among the Wanderers. They were contaminated humans who had been transformed into a demonic person. Unfortunately, I knew this story. Han Soo-young saw it and muttered. Damn it, someone got the story of the third-place ranker. Third on the Dark Castle rankings, King of the Dead, Davitz. It seemed there was a person among the Wanderers who had killed Davitz. King of the Dead was a story that was as powerful as Paradise of Despair. King of the Dead was a skill used to turn the dead into undead to fight. Get ready to run, Kim Dokja. Break through here. Han Soo-young created 10 or more avatars and untied the bandage around his right hand. Black ether focused in their hands and black flames swept over the battlefield. I ran along the path Han Soo-young made. I overcame the group of demonic person and shook off the Wanderers. Then I saw Cho Young-ran using King of the Dead. As expected, this woman had the story. The first spiritualist of Joseon, she had the mechanical gateway array method and King of the Dead. My mother had a truly versatile subordinate. She was taking a magic power potion and looked surprised to see me. Kim Dokja? How did you? You were caught in the 8-beaded bells seal. I was a bit troubled. Cho Young-ran gathered her magic power. Maybe this person was currently third on the Dark Castle rankings. Stop and back off. I don't want to hurt you. I can't. There was a sign she was using the mechanical gateway array method again, and I raised the energy I had kept hidden. Then Cheok Jung-yang's strength was released. The constellation, first spiritualist of Joseon, is greatly confused. The mechanical gateway array method was broken and blood flowed from Cho Young-ran's mouth. Sparks flew behind her and a voice was heard. This aura. Why are you here? In the end, John Wu-chi spoke in his true voice. Then Cheok Jung-yang replied, get lost. But you aren't his sponsor. I won't tell you twice. Quack. John Wu-chi was crushed by the strong difference in status and quickly disappeared. Cho Young-ran was unable to cope with the aftermath of the probability consumption and staggered. She could no longer maintain King of the Dead and the balance of the battlefield started to collapse. And no. You can't, Kim Dokja. I ignored Cho Young-ran and ran. I wasn't afraid of any attacks pouring towards me because of Cheok Jung-young. The difference in status was huge. After 5 minutes, the center of the battlefield was revealed. It was the place where the most powerful sparks were present. On the field where White Knight, the people I knew were pointing weapons at each other. Han Soo-young ran up behind me and opened her mouth. Your mother is a monster. I wasn't too surprised. My mother would surely be at this level. The information that I knew. My mother was fighting on an equal footing with Yu Jung-hyuk and my other colleagues. An incarnation who could fight evenly against a transcendent didn't exist. Behind my mother's back was the shadow of a giant bear. Poor descendants. I don't want to fight. I had seen Yamada no Orochi descend in the same form on Peace Land. It was the descent of the shadow of Founder's mother. Han Soo-young shook her head as the nightmare of Peace Land came to life. How, wouldn't the probability be lacking? It is due to the 8-beaded bell. One of the 3 heavenly treasures shone in my mother's hand. The lack of probability was replaced by a powerful relic. If you don't want to fight, then why do you keep hitting us? Yua. The shadow of the giant bear swept through the field, causing Lee Jae-hai and Lee Hyun-sung to be thrown out. They couldn't stand properly against the destructive power. It was obviously a terrible situation. Dr. SSI. Yu Sanga recognized me first. Then the other party members approached me. Jung Hee-won shouted first. Dr. SSI, talk to your mother. Hyung, is that person really your mother? Yu Sung. Dr. SSI, what is this situation? The words poured out all at once and I couldn't answer. Finally, Yu Jung-hyuk approached me. I guess your mother doesn't like me.